Terrariums are very simple to make and they're a great activity. The first step you need to do is select the container. I have two right here that are empty and ready to go. As you can see, this one has an open hole and this one has a lid. Not all terrariums need a lid. First, you want to select your container. Second, you want to select your plants. Here I have a selection of little miniature indoor tropical house plants. So you can see they come in a wide variety. And generally I always like to create a combination that is varied in texture and color. And by texture I mean leaf texture, like this particular pink polka dot plant, or this Petonia, also known as nerve plant. So for this particular container, I want to choose this philodendron with a Selaginella moss and this little mini African violet. Generally, in containers of these sizes, you only want to put 2 to 3 into the actual terrarium, because your space is obviously limited and you don't want to overcrowd the terrarium. Next, you want to add your potting medium. For potting medium, I always like to use horticultural charcoal, and generally I'll just pour in about a 1/4 inch layer. I have in this particular container already put the horticultural charcoal in. The next step is miniature, or some people like to use pea gravel, or I like to use a small stone, decorative stone. Kind of spread it around evenly. Your layers for all the potting mediums generally are about 1/4 inch. For the soil, you can go, depending on the size of the container, to about 1/2 inch. Next, African violet soil. And just kind of generally pat it down. Okay, now we're going to start to place our plants in. What I like to do is I like to lay out my design before I actually plant. Now in some cases you can't do this because the container may be a little small, but I like to usually start generally with my largest plant towards the back. I like to start with my tallest plant, or the largest plant, towards the back or the center, the shortest towards the front. And basically what you want to do is you want to pop out the individual plants, loosen up the root ball and spread them out flat. Make a little well, push over some of the soil to cover the root ball. I'm going to continue with this little mini African violet. Sometimes I like to remove any of the larger leaves, but it doesn't harm the plant. It just makes it fit better in the terrarium. And you can move around the other plants in the terrarium if you find that they're not fitting properly. And then this little Selaginella moss is one of my favorites because it makes a nice ground cover for the terrarium, and it loves lots of humidity. It's the perfect plant for this culture. And there we go, we have all your plants in. Now you can add your terrarium accessories. We have several things that I like to add to top dress a terrarium. It's always nice to cover the soil with a moss. It helps keep the moisture in. This is actually moss that I've taken from my yard. You can also use some dry preserved moss that you can find in your local garden center. The other thing I like to add to terrariums, sometimes you find little pine cones or little twigs. I always like the twigs that have the green lichen moss on it. They just break apart. They add interest to your little woodland terrarium. And then generally I always like to add some of these nice large smooth stones, thinking for little miniature boulders for your terrarium. And there you have it, your little woodland terrarium. Just add a little water. You want to make sure that you don't over soak it. So I think it's best to water with a slight trickle from the faucet of your sink, or you could also use a turkey baster. I learned from other people, individuals, and they find that that works for them as well. And you can enjoy your terrarium for many months to come.